And welcome to our final session of Optimize 23 Business Writing. What a fabulous day it has been. We have had, this is our 11th talk that we're about to start. We've touched so many great topics, from AI to measurement to proposal writing to storytelling. We've really touched on so many different things. Before I begin, I'm going to thank all the speakers that have been involved. It's just been a fantastic day. We've learned so much, and thank you all for joining this final session, and it's a real good one. It's a real summary of the entire day. We're delighted to have Shipley involved. We're delighted to have Brad Douglas here today. Before we start, just a little bit of housekeeping. If this is your first session, we do have a Q&A box on the screen where you can ask questions directly to Brad. We're going to tackle the questions as we go, so feel free to bring in questions. We also have an attendee chat. Feel free to tell us how many sessions that you've gone to today, and what's been your favorite session. Feel free to knock that into the chat, and we can chat away there. If you do have any questions or anything for Visible Thread, feel free to put it into Q&A box. I'm more than happy to help you. So, without further ado, I'm going to pass you to Brad Douglas of Shipley. Brad, how are you today?
Doing fantastic, thanks. And I know it's been a long day for those that have been involved all day. So nice to be a part of this. Thank you.
You're very good. It is a great session. So Brad has kindly offered to talk about almost the proposal writing process from, in a way, start to finish. And there's lots of summarized slides here of similar things we've talked about already today. So I think it's a great presentation to finish off with. So Brad, I'll let you take over from here.
Okay, I'm going to just start by asking a real simple math question. No using Chat GPT or any of the artificial intelligence stuff we've talked about. I want everyone who's on just to no cheating. Just here's a simple math problem, and chat the answer in the chat box without calculating it on your phone. What is the answer to 2 plus 10 divided by 2? 2 plus 10 divided by 2. Chat the answer in the chat box. 2 plus 10 divided by 2. Can you read off the answers? I'm not seeing those pop up. What are we getting?
Not yet. 7. I have 6, 6, 6, 6, 6 and 7s.
6 and 7s. Wait, how can there be 2 answers? We're pretty smart people, right? 6s and 7s?
Yeah.
About equally split. Okay. Well, this is about a 3rd or 4th grade if you're in the US math problem. And here we are, a bunch of smart adults, and we can't agree on the answer to this math problem. And there's some actually correlation between this and what we're going to wrap up with today. There's more than one right answer. There is no one single cookie cutter way to prepare for or do a proposal or any other type of document. So back to the math problem, the reason we're getting different answers is there's a fundamental principle of mathematics that says you're supposed to apply the order of operations when you do math. You're supposed to multiply or divide before you add or subtract. If we apply that premise, that principle of math, the answer is 7. 10 divided by 2 is 5, plus 2 is 7. If we forget that principle and we throw it out and we ignore it, we get a completely different answer. And so if we just go left to right, we're going to get 6. So the point is, there is no one single way to do a proposal. There's more than one right answer, but there are certain principles of winning work, competing for business, that make all the difference in the world. And that's what this whole day has been about. This whole day has been full of great ideas, concepts, techniques, principles that if we apply, we're going to win more business as a group. So let's talk about this repeatable writing approach. This will be review for many of you who are familiar with Shipley, and maybe some have attended some of our training programs. We've created this mnemonic, and I know it sounds simple, and maybe overly simple for some, but power: plan, organize, write, examine, and revise. And that's what we're going to talk about. And again, this is mostly refresher based on what's gone on if you've been in other sessions today. But these words, these simple words, are like that math principle. They're the foundation. If we will do this, if we will coach our teams and mentor our people, if we will help them plan and organize and then write and then examine and then revise, we have a much better chance of being compliant, like Jenny talked about, and being responsive and being focused on the customer and telling the story. So that's what we want to go through, is just a quick review of power: plan, organize, write, examine, and revise. And this is what some of our teams need. They need something like this, a repeatable, memorable mnemonic that will help them work through the proposal process. So here you see each of those. And I know those that are interested will go back and you can review this, you can print it off. This is a fantastic idea for a brown bag session for your teams. This is a fantastic way to present to our technical teams, our solution architects, our SMEs, on how they can contribute to a proposal, a winning proposal document. Unless we teach this, unless we put this out to our teams, there's more than just putting fingers to keyboard to writing a good proposal section or writing a good answer to an RFP question or questionnaire. We've got to think it through. And so some of the panelists right before this session and in some of the other sessions, we talked a little bit about the strategy of writing. That's what the planning and organizing is. It's all about the strategic thinking that goes into our proposals. So here you see bulleted lists, and we obviously, this could be a whole half-day explanation of what this power approach represents. We'll go through each of those briefly. We've talked about, and again, I'll reinforce, there are different purposes. There's different ways to organize. There's different audiences and different reader intents for the different kinds of documents we produce. So there's technical documents, there's proposal documents, there's sections within our proposals. There's the executive summary, there's the management approach, the technical approach, the cost volume, the past performance write-ups and volumes. Each of these types of documents has different reader intent and audience, and they may need to be organized differently and different purposes. The purpose of a proposal is obvious. We are trying to sell a solution in our organization to a prospective customer or an existing customer. So different purposes for different types of documents. There was a great session earlier today, if you participated in it, in storytelling. And the message there was so perfect. A proposal is not just a story, but it's a persuasive story. It's designed to help the customer select us. So you see the difference here graphically. When we're writing a story, and the presenter actually talked about this idea of, every so often in a story, there's a main point, a climax. Same with a proposal. We have to be very compelling at every single section, every single subsection of our proposal. But a story typically builds up to some kind of ending, sometimes happy ever after, I think was mentioned earlier. A proposal, though, we've got to start with the most important idea first, the bottom line up front. What matters to the customer? What are they going to get out of our proposed solution? So it's a little bit different than storytelling. It is telling a story, but in a different way. Jenny did a nice job, I thought, on the panel too, and Julia and Natalia. We've categorized what makes an effective proposal, what makes it persuasive and compelling, and APMP would align with this as well. These are the real 7 indicators that we need to focus on when we're working with proposal documents and with proposal teams. Notice at the top, compliance. We have to absolutely be compliant, as was said earlier. We have to be responsive. We have to go beyond compliance, and we have to actually address the underlying objectives. What is the U.S. Air Force? What is the Department of Treasury? What are they trying to accomplish by putting out a solicitation? What's the underlying beyond the requirements? That's what we mean by being responsive. Strategic focus, competitive focus, the quality of writing. That's been the focus of a lot of these sessions today, which have been fantastic. We haven't talked much about graphics. It's a very important part of a proposal. And we did talk quite a bit about page and document design. It matters. An evaluator, a reader's first impression of what they see on the screen, on their monitor, or if they print the proposal out on the page, first impressions matter. We shouldn't think for a moment that it doesn't matter what it looks like, what it feels like at a glance. There's a question. This is a great question. When are graphics developed using Power? Anytime. You know, sometimes when we're interviewing a technical, a SME, a subject matter expert, or a solution architect, sometimes when we're planning our section and we're trying to understand the technical solution, if we can, with them, kind of just sketch something out on a page, that can become a master graphic in that proposal section. So graphics can happen anytime during the Power process. Some key graphics ought to be developed really early during the planning. And then as we start actually writing captions and headings and theme statements, graphics can evolve or can be matured and changed. Great question. Thank you for that. So those are the 7 characteristics that, you know, part of what Shipley does, we're lucky in that we're kind of industry agnostic, as has been mentioned earlier. We get to work with a lot of industries, international, domestic, commercial, GovCon, nonprofit, academia. And so we're kind of the aggregator. We're kind of the aggregator of best practice to say, this is what makes a compelling proposal and gives you the best chance of win in almost any industry. It doesn't matter. This is the foundation, that 2 + 10 divided by 2 foundational principle, order of operations. If we can get our teams to focus on these 7 areas, we have a better chance of being more efficient, using our resources better, and hopefully winning more business. Okay, so just a couple of key points here before we dive into each one of those letters in that mnemonic, that word power. The importance of clear writing, I think that's been well documented today in the sessions. If you didn't get a chance to participate in the sessions live, please go back. Visible Thread's going to post these. I encourage you to go back and review those. But we have to be clear, crystal clear in our writing. Why must we make content more readable? Because we're writing for the evaluator. If they can't read it, and if they can't understand it, forget it. Forget it. We're not going to score well. It's all about getting the best evaluation scores. And understanding has to come before an evaluator, a customer, is going to be persuaded. If they don't understand what we're writing, or what we're showing in a graphic or what we're showing in a chart, they can't be persuaded. Understanding has to come before persuasion. Readership increases by 43 to 60% when complexity is reduced by 3 grade levels. If we're writing at this grade level and most of our evaluators and readers and reviewers are at this grade level, we've lost them. We've lost them. And readership declines, our evaluation scores decline. This is just kind of a funny, I think, fact that over the years, humanity, we've lost the ability to comprehend long sentences. It used to be cool to write long sentences because Mrs. Jones in 6th grade, she wanted a 500-word essay. Or Mr. Tomlinson, he wanted a 1,000-word essay. So we thought long sentences were cool, but clear back to the 1600s. That's a little exaggeration, probably. But if our words in our sentences are more than 20 words, we ought to probably take a look at trying to cut that back. This is where tools like Visible Thread can really be very, very helpful, not just with word count, but with grade levels. We can preset, levels that we want readership to be at. Some of the technology tools out there are fantastic in helping us be more readable, more understandable. A story that is 9 paragraphs long loses 30% of readership by the end of the 5th paragraph. Think of how you like to read. How do you read now? And some of you have been, or some of you might be on evaluation boards, and you're being asked to review and score and evaluate proposals. If these paragraphs, if they go on and on, or our section goes longer than 9 paragraphs, we start losing readership. So we need to be really careful. We need to, of course, we need to be compliant. We need to be responsive. If it takes 15 paragraphs to do it, fine. But we've got to be really careful and be clear and concise. A few presenters during the day today, it was fantastic, mentioned tone and clarity. Don't think for a minute that tone doesn't come through in our proposals. If we come across arrogant, if we come across like we are the only solution that could possibly solve a customer's problem, that might be perceived as arrogant. Stubborn, obnoxious, rude, unreliable. I mean, look at all those words that can be part of the tone of a proposal. Versus, we want to be likable. Yes, we want to be memorable. We heard a presentation on being sticky and stickiness. We want to be memorable, and we want the customer to remember us. So the Shipley Power approach, again, it is just a simple mnemonic, but it helps us, and it helps our teams to remember we've got to spend time up front planning, strategizing. Who's our competition? What are our strengths and weaknesses? How are we going to embed those in our proposal? All of those sales and capture activities and strategies and win strategies, that's all part of planning. And the panel before this session talked about that in a great way. Organizing. Those of you that are working government proposals, they tell us how they want the response organized. So it's pretty straightforward. We organize as instructed, period. Those of us that are bidding on more business to business work or some R&D, and we have a little more flexibility in how we organize. In those cases, we focus on what matters to the customer. Those are the items we address first. And then we'll get into writing, examining, and revising. So let's talk about, well, let me just pause. Let's see. I'm gonna stick some glasses on here. How do you address proposals that slide far right in the process? Do you have a cutoff to prevent burnout? John, I'm not sure. Let's see. I think what we're saying is short turn, quick turn proposal responses. Obviously, we have to shorten that planning process. We've got to go with what we have. This is where reuse material comes in really, really handy. This is where some of the AI platforms might help us generate some quick hit content, but as was stated clearly, we still need the human touch on those. Do you have a cutoff to prevent burnout? I'm not sure I understand that question. I'm sorry.
I think he's like I think he's connecting with kind of a scope creep of a proposal, how to prevent it going far right in terms of how dragging on, how to prevent burnout on a particular proposal that where teams might be stretched too far.
Yeah. I'm still not exactly clear how to respond other than it gets back to what was said again, I'll revert to the panel discussion before this, making sure everyone understands their roles and their responsibilities. If we don't do the planning, some sort of planning up front, we are going to burn people out.
Yeah.
If we skip planning and organizing and we just turn right to writing, maybe that's what the question is. If we just skip that and go right to writing, it's going to be a ton of rework and it is going to burn people out because we're going to have to, instead of do 2 revisions, we're going to have to do 10 revisions. Absolutely. And we're going to have people jumping into the mix that want to rework everything and wordsmith everything. So maybe that gets to the heart of it is if we ignore that front end planning, we go right into just trying to answer the mail, it creates a ton of rework.
Agree. Yeah, we spoke about that earlier in previous sessions about objective planning and outlining, and even if you're at this stage, kind of identifying and clarifying the process for editing, knowing what exactly your team needs to do to get this over the line.
And
John,
I've seen John's comment. Yeah, and especially in the government space, a lot of times these due dates slide. They slide to the right, and we need to expect that almost. We need to be prepared for that and plan on that. So when we talk about proposal planning, we kind of teach it in our training classes. We talk about building contingency plans. Part of the contingency plan for writing a response, a proposal, is what if it does slide to the right? What are we going to do with these resources that we've teed up to help with this proposal? We have to have alternatives and contingency plans so that we do avoid the burnout. Great discussion point.
Great.
Okay, good. Thank you, John, for chiming in there. Planning, just some key points here. And again, there's probably too much here to dwell on in detail. We've got to understand the objective of what the customer's objective is, who the likely audience is, and that's been mentioned in almost every session today. Who is the customer? What do we know about them? Do they have biases? What's our core message? How are we going to deliver it? Might be a presentation. Some of these government agencies now are going more to oral proposals. And then how do we manage the content? So that's all part of planning. Notice this little paragraph. All right, so here's a little cutout from a potential request for proposal, a tender, an RFQ, whatever. Just simple, straightforward paragraph. The panel before this session talked about compliance matrix, and so others have mentioned it too. In this paragraph, what do we need to respond to? Well, everyone's going to have a little different opinion. This is where we have to start tracking every single section, paragraph of a request for proposal, a tender, an RFI. We have to pull out these keywords. They want us to explain why our organization is suited. They want us to describe, they want us to indicate, and then they want us to tell us how we're going to achieve it. Not just what we're going to do, but tell us how you're going to achieve the results. We've got to be able, in our planning of our proposal writing, to pull out these key requirements. And if it's a complex proposal and we have time, we've got to build this compliance matrix and make sure we don't miss any of those. We do describe, we're going to explain, we're going to indicate, and we're going to tell them how we're going to achieve it. So planning, those of you that have been doing proposals for a while and you are familiar with APMP best practice and what Shipley and others teach, we put a lot of emphasis on theme statements, providing the evaluator roadmaps, key messages that are benefits focused on them and their benefits to help guide their readership, their reading of the proposal. You have to keep emphasizing why us and why not our competitors. We need to begin with the customer's name. This has been stated. We call this customer focus. Name the customer. Name them more often than we name ourselves when we can. This was repeated over and over today. It's not about us. It's about solving the customer's problem and creating value for them. So what's the customer going to be able to improve on, when, how much, and why us? What differentiates us from everyone else? So planning our theme statements is a big part of planning our proposal. Organizing, pretty straightforward in most cases. Here's a simple concept, right? You see those 4 boxes down the right side there. Maybe there's a preview to our section, a very short introduction, then the body of our response, and then we're going to review. So it's back to what we learned in school. Tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them without being repetitive or redundant. So a few key points here: organize based on customer needs, group similar ideas as best you can, most important ideas first, use headings and theme statements to guide the reader. These are those fundamentals. 2 + 10 divided by 2, the order of operations. If we will adhere to some of these basic principles, we've got a better chance of submitting a winning proposal. Here you see just kind of the top-down organization for the O in power. An opening section, a first section, the next section. Each section has a brief intro, a brief summary, and a brief conclusion. Here you see how to structure and organize a possible section. Here's the answer. We talked about one session we had today, talked a lot about validating our claims. Putting forward empty claims and statistics that we can't validate is a bad idea. So what's our argument, and what evidence can we provide the customer that we can actually do the work? So on this next slide, you see an example. ABC will improve effectiveness by 25%. Here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to do it. And here's some evidence, some proof. We want those proof points. So this is all part of organizing and planning and organizing our proposals and our proposal sections. Okay, are there any questions lingering?
There's one there, Brad. How to respond to every requirement when sections L, M, and SOW do not align and you have to hit the page limit? Do you focus on section L requirements, or L fold into M, and then fold into SOW?
My response would be there's more than one right answer. I'm going to default to the 4th grade math problem, but the principle, however, is we've got to answer it all. And yes, they may not align. Sometimes, if we're allowed, we actually have to provide the customer a response matrix, and we need to tell them where we've addressed that piece of information in the SOW in our proposal response, or that bit of information in L. But yes, L is usually the guide. It's usually the foundation, and then heavily influencing that in the U.S. government proposals would be the M, evaluation, criteria, and then of course the SAL. So great question. There's no one right answer and no easy answer. It is so frustrating. I understand. It's hard when the customer's solicitation doesn't align. And they sometimes go so far as ask completely different things in the same solicitation. So great question. Let's move on to the W, the writing. And again, please go back to some of these sessions from today. And if you didn't get a chance to sit in and take a look at these, because a lot of them were about this very thing, writing. How do we make the best use of our time when writing? Start anywhere. Sometimes we think we've got to start from the beginning in our writing. No, start anywhere, go everywhere, and just keep going. Think about key messages. This is where that outlining comes into play. An annotated outline is so helpful to our writers if we can create a good outline. Technology can help us, but we've got to massage it. We've got to make it worthwhile and helpful. Think about graphics early. Think about them later. But what would help us tell the story? What would help the evaluator understand what we're trying to position? Craft and draft content quickly, resist revising as we go. This is a common challenge. We tend to think everything has to be perfect. We've got to get that first draft exactly right. It slows us down and makes it more complicated. So just keep on going. There's been a couple sessions on this, which have been fantastic. And this is really just kind of to summarize. When we're talking about language models and using those, there is certainly a place for it. Absolute place for it. It can help with efficiency. So these are some of the pros. Quick, easy, broad access to content generally, helps us brainstorm ideas, gives us access to multi-source data, primary and secondary data sometimes. Some of the cautions and we got to be really careful, and this came up in the session, confidential information. Heaven forbid classified information gets out on these models. What we get might be dated. I will tell you, as soon as ChatGPT came out, I went in and I asked for an overview of Shipley Associates, and they thought this guy named Clark Shipley started the company. I don't even know a Clark Shipley. And so, just be really careful, because garbage in, garbage out to some extent. There may be bias in there. We don't always have the contextual knowledge if we're depending on artificial intelligence as our source. Some people might use this as an excuse. Well, I didn't come up with that. ChatGPT did. And now we lose accountability in management. People can become reckless with it. And there could be just flat out wrong stuff, could conflict with reality and truth. So use it, but be careful. I'm not going to dwell on each one of these points, because this is the end of the day, last session. Customer focus in our writing has been emphasized over and over through these last 8 hours today. And these are just some ways, some indicators of how we can make sure our writing, our content, is focused on the customer. And you can go through these: validate all claims, organize as instructed, name the customer first. So these are indicators. Coach your teams on this. We need to share this. We need to educate our teams, whatever their role and responsibility, on what it is to create customer-focused proposal content. We are a strong advocate at Shipley in using informative headings in our proposal sections. We could just put revenue as a heading to a topic that's discussing revenue, or we could tell the customer what is important about what they're about to read. that there is a benefit here. Same with employment. We could use employment as a heading, or we could say creating extensive high quality job opportunities for transferred staff. Boy, that's the benefit. That's what we're trying to sell. And then increasing the message impact with graphics and captions. We've mentioned that. We won't, this is a whole topic kind of in and of itself. But try to do these early and often. Start with, even if it's a sketch, where can graphics really add value? Select a graphic that really helps the reader understand, the evaluator. Sometimes we can use customer graphics if we've got the right permissions. Simple, uncluttered. Don't make the evaluator like rotate the screen or rotate the page, keep them vertical. Just, again, some key points on customer-focused writing. Break it up, use headings, use white space, make sure we're using the right font sizes, font types that they've instructed, basic information. And then, it sounds kind of old school, but checklists are really helpful. Just having some litmus test to assess our writing and our proposal sections or our volume or the entire proposal or the executive summary. Checklists are very, very helpful. And so technology is helpful. Old school checklists are helpful. Use what we have at our disposal. And then examine the E in power. We make this a lowercase e for kind of a goofy reason, I guess. But this is the one area in the writing approach where we've got to step outside of ourselves even more. We depend on other people to examine our work. So we want to set this apart a little bit and say, look, this is where serious collaboration comes in. Yes, it comes in early in the planning and organizing, but we should not be reviewing our own material and examining our own material. So yes, review it, call on others. Don't be afraid to read it out loud. We won't go into all of the different types of reviews. We're looking for people to help us, not criticize, suggest improvements, not just wordsmith. What can a reviewer do to really help us? And there's really two types of reviews. There's in an agile, nimble environment, we're doing daily or regular or routine status reviews. Whatever we call them and label them, there's no reason to wait for a large team review in our proposal work. We should be constantly asking for help and reviewing and doing these stand-up milestone reviews. These are key team reviews. Industry often uses color teams still, pink team, red team. Whatever we call them, there's key milestone reviews at certain parts of our development that we need to work on. And then I don't know if you've ever tried this. It's fascinating, actually. Read your work out loud. When's the last time you took a 5-page section that you had authored and you actually took time to read it out loud? Read it out loud to a peer, to a subordinate. It's a great idea. It's a great technique, and it's sometimes hard. I hate listening to my own voice, but you know what? Don't be afraid to use this as a technique to help us be more readable, more customer focused. Okay, the final letter, revise, the R in power. The goal here, we're trying to improve readability. This is where visible thread can really come in and be very, very helpful. Other tools as well. We're looking for clarity here. Use the review cycles. This has been mentioned, if you need a way to try and remember what we're reviewing for, call it the 4 C's. We want to be clear, we want to be concise, we want to be correct, and we want to be compelling. Don't make the customer dig for every single answer to every requirement. Clear, concise, correct, and compelling. So be clear. In our emails, this is a lost art, I'm telling you. How many emails do you get with a 1 or 2 word subject line? And it's so stupid. Why not tell the reader what they need to know or do or feel in the subject line? Why do we bury it somewhere in the email? The subject line is there for a reason. It's to get attention and help the receiver take action, do what you need them to do. So be clear in our subject line, our objectives, be customer focused in the content of our proposals, be concise, paragraph, sentences, words, descriptions, be correct, proofread everything, watch our formulas, references, technical data, spelling, grammar, tone, be compelling. Why us? Why not them? Validate everything. What's the return on investment to the customer? What's the value proposition we're really offering? Now, being correct. I'm just going to scroll through these fast. If you want, you can come back to these, but choosing the right words. We get so jumbled up in our own language sometimes. We use the wrong words, and I'm not exempt from this. It's just we get going so fast, and spell check won't catch these things. So these are just some common redundant words. Watch for redundancies. When we're in that revise phase, we're really trying to sharpen our content. Look for ways we can get rid of redundancies in our language. Complex words. Don't make it overly complex. Avoid cliches and jargon. That's been talked about a lot today, which is fantastic. These are common repeat words that are probably way too frequent in our proposals. Be clear. Say what we mean.
Brad,
yes, please.
No, just one point there, and there's a couple of comments there regarding different types of words, use versus utilize, and things like that. I'm wondering, these type of watchwords and kind of dictionary lists and stuff. Do you have any recommendation for the group around refreshing of these dictionaries? We find with some customers they spend a lot of time creating dictionaries, and they use the power of visible thread then to do analysis based on that. But then sometimes they would just continue to use that for a long period of time and maybe don't adjust. Do you have any sort of recommendation for kind of the lifespan of these?
Oh, I think at least twice a year minimum.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, language changes fast. The way people read and interpret, and, that's just kind of a rule of thumb. I would say a minimum twice a year, a good cleanse, a good review, but perhaps more often.
We've seen customers do things with if they have a series of wins or if they have a series of losses, that they would do analysis based on those type of, what keywords are they using phenomenally, or where they might have not used the brand name in the proposals, or not use the customer's name in the proposals. They would do kind of that type of analysis almost quite regularly to kind of make sure when they go into the next proposal, they're more set up. And it's a good, I think these type of lists, I think people love these, and I think they really do tangible, but I do think the point of continuously editing and continuously updating them is always going to be beneficial for your org.
Yeah. Great point, and thanks for bringing that up, because we should be reviewing each proposal, to get better. So if, for example, I were to say this, some of you who have been through our writing training, this will be old hat to you. What do you think I'm really trying to say? I don't have to use words like this. All I'm trying to do is say I used a fork to eat my potato. Let me go back and have that build. Just say what we mean and make it easy. There were some questions in earlier sessions about how technical our language should be. And again, there's more than one right answer. We sometimes we have to write to the lowest common denominator if we know who the evaluation board is. Sometimes we're writing to a very technical audience. And so this is where customer analysis and understanding the customer really comes into play. So just in summary, and I hope this has been helpful in kind of bringing a lot of what was talked about today together. This mnemonic can help if you're in a position where you can coach others, or you're being asked to mentor someone, or provide short little training snippets. This becomes a really good model for you to teach this concept. Hey, we've got a plan. We've got to plan this out before we start writing. Now, how are we going to organize this section, this proposal, this volume? Here are some writing guidelines. This is how we want to be customer focused. These are theme statements that we want. Here's an outline. We're going to annotate this outline. We're going to give you a page bogey. Now, after we get a draft, here's how we're going to go about examining those drafts. We're going to do it regularly, but we're also going to do team reviews, and then we're going to revise and make it better. So just a quick, easy way to school our team up and bring our team together and up to speed. So I'll pause there and just see if there are any more lingering questions out there. And if not, we'll call it a night or a day, wherever you are.
You're very good, Brad. Brad, thank you so much for that. I think it was a great synopsis of the entire day and bringing some new insights and some tactical pieces as well into the final session. We've been asking most of the speakers this kind of consistent question of, if you were to give a writer out there one piece of advice, what would it be? What would be your number one tip?
It seems simple, but focus on the customer. Like others have said, it's not about how big, bad, fast we are. It's about what problems are we going to solve and how, and then prove it. Just stay customer focused. Don't get so caught up in drinking our own Kool-Aid.
Simple answers are always the best ones, aren't they? It's always that way. Brad, you've been fantastic. I don't think we have any other questions. Do you have any final parting words for the group?
No, it's just been a pleasure. And we're all trying to get better. If this is your profession, if this is where you're going forward in your career, take the opportunity like this to learn. APMP offers a ton of good information, good sessions, a body of knowledge, a certification program. So, if this is where you're landing career-wise, I just encourage everybody to keep learning and keep sharing with one another. That's all.
That's fantastic. Brad, thank you so much. This excellent presentation. It was really helpful. Like this presentation and all the presentations today will be shared with all the attendees and registrants. Feel free to share them into your networks and with your colleagues. We're trying to support people out there and give people new knowledge and latest learnings and the easiest formats we can do it. It's been an outstanding day. We've had over 1,000 people join us at different times. It's just been remarkable. So thank you to all the speakers, and thank you to everybody who turned up today. It's been an honor to host this event, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.